And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, an introduction to VMware Carbon Black. Are you ready for cyber attacks? I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. She is a senior technical trainer at VMware, Ruth Capizone. Ruth, you now have the floor.
Good morning. I want to make sure you all can hear me. Make sure I start my camera. Looks like you guys can. Good morning. And are you ready for cyber attacks, especially now with COVID? So what I want to start out with first is I want to bring out an article. Well, first tell you a little bit about me. Again, my name is Ruth Capizone. I'm actually here in Washington, D.C., originally from Southern California. And I own a few certs, Certified Ethical Hacker, CISSP, CSXP. The Certified Ethical Hacker or penetration testing, red team type of certification. CSXP, many may have not have heard of that one. That's an incident responder. And that's exactly what I want to cover today. I want to cover both sides, how to protect against attacks, and then how do we perform incident response, okay? A few training certs, and of course, especially now, I've got the quarantine 15 due to my hobby being food, okay? So good, you guys, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. So what I want to start with first is there was an article that I want to talk about right now. So let me go ahead and bring this over. I talked about how, hold on one second, you guys. I talked about how COVID-19, since the attacks, more and more people are working from home. Okay, so they're working from home and they've got kids at home. They've got not the protection of, say, a DMZ within our environment, 2 firewalls, lots of controls internally. So what's to stop them from having, say, their laptop at home? They leave it running. Their kids see it running. They decide they want to go on the internet, load some games, which are full of viruses and so on, onto your work laptop. So how do we prevent that? So I actually want to cover three of many tools that we have. One is called App Control. The other is called EDR, Endpoint Detection and Response. The other one is EDR Cloud. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of all three. First, App Control. Okay. So now without app control, you know, with me having like 21 years of IT experience, I remember when I first started, the user would delete something off of their machine or load something on their machine. All of a sudden things aren't working. You walk over, I was help desk. Walk over, what did you do, user? I did nothing. Then you see all this stuff on their machine. So that's without app control, lots of troubleshooting, lots of issues with allowing users to install things on their machine. With app control, we have an automated way of allowing or disallowing the installation, even running of applications. Let me give you an example, okay? So here are your endpoints. Okay, the users, right now, they may have the ability to install or run, or even attackers install something on their machine and allow it to run. What we do is we install the app control agent, and it can be installed in multiple ways. We can use Altiris, Microsoft System Center. We can even install the agent from our app control server, which is what you're seeing in the middle. Okay. So we get that installed. Now, what's important about this is during the installation process, there is something called initialization, where the agent goes and pretty much takes an inventory of the executables that are on the user's machine. And then they are locally approved. That's going to get important in just a second. Okay, so they're locally approved, which means they're allowed to run on that machine. But at the same time, as you're seeing here, that inventory is sent over to our app control server. Now, what does the app control server do? It keeps track of everything that's going on in our environment. It maintains a file catalog of all the executables, everything that's running on everyone's machine. Now, our app control server can handle up to 180,000 endpoints. Okay. Now, what does it do with it? Okay. So what does our app control server do? It sends it out to our CB Defense Collective Cloud. Now, what we do here at Carbon Black, we have a lot of engineers that do threat intelligence. They maintain a list of just about as much as we can find all the threats out there on the internet. So we do our own research. We use third-party research as well, such as SANS, MITRE, National Vulnerability Database, and many, many more. So what happens next, so let me get my pointer here for you. What happens next, we do maintain an inventory here. We say, hey, threat intelligence, what do you know about this one, or 10, or 50,000? They respond back, they give us two things. This is a trust or threat, and they give us a range. Like, for example, on Notepad, that was built into Windows. So Notepad would be given a trust rating of like a 10, completely trusted, not a problem. You know what, or is it? We want to talk about that in just a second. Is Notepad trusted? Is PowerShell trusted? Is the command line trusted? And can these trusted applications be used against us? And they can, as we'll see. So it's returned back, and this is all done over a secure port 443. Turns back and it says, hey, here we know about this executable. Okay, and it's up to us to allow it or deny it, ban it. Okay, and all that information is stored in a database. Now, this app control server is a Windows server. Okay, it has and it requires SQL Server to be installed, and that's where this information is stored. Now, here's what happens next. Let's just say it does an inventory on the endpoints and locally approves those executables. Now the user wants to install something new. Perhaps there's some malware running in our environment, tries to run on the user's machine. Depending on what policy we deploy, it will, depends. Let's assume we set it up for a high enforcement. Anything new that has not been approved is automatically blocked, as we'll see. Okay. I want to give you an example coming up shortly. Now, if it's blocked and it needs to be approved, the user can submit a request for a approval, as I'm getting ready to show you. Okay. So let me go ahead and minimize this. I'm going to bring this over. Let me give you an example of app control. Okay, so this is what the interface looks like. Love it. I can get a list of the last blocks by computer. This is our landing page here and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to rules. But you know what, before I do that, let me show you something. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to try, and this is something that the users can do. I'm going to go ahead and try to install, say, an FTP client. Now, again, this could be your kids. While we're asleep, they're jumping on your work computer. They're wanting to load the latest Fighter 10,000 application full of viruses. So they might be allowed, okay, because perhaps we have administrative rights. But what I'm going to do is go into app control. I know that reads CD protection. That was a prior name of our application. So I'm going to go to rules, okay, create a policy. And look at our options here, you guys. That's one of our protection features too, so make sure that if we're not working, we're logged out properly. Okay. Now, by default, there are some rules here by default. You see where it says this is an initial install. Basically take an inventory of what's on the user's machine, locally approve everything. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a policy. I'll call this one demo policy. Okay. Now you guys take a look at these options. The first one is visibility, just watch and report. So if I go to reports, it'll show up in events, anything that's run in our environment. The other one is disabled. I primarily use that one if I'm troubleshooting. Now, control is where we want to be. And we have 3 different levels of control. Low, which means just monitor, don't block anything. Medium, allow the user to choose whether or not they want something to be allowed or blocked. Now, I'm not a fan of allowing the users to do anything. I like high, but it just depends on what we need in our environment. I'm going to choose block anything that has not been specifically approved will be blocked. Okay. So what I'm going to do, now here's the thing. Some applications like Chrome, Adobe, Office, they are constantly coming out with updates. We perhaps may not want the user to get blocked with those type of upgrades. So we can say, you know what, yes, for this application, we will, if something's already on their machine, allow it to be upgraded or not. Okay. So I'm going to click Save and Exit. This is doing nothing. It's just sitting there, very similar to your group policy. So if I go to Assets, these are all the endpoints in our environment. Right now we have 2, but we can support up to 180,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this machine that I'm currently on, choose to bind the policy. Now, what's interesting, and I want you guys to note this, notice it reads here, it can take a few seconds. You see where it says it's out of date. So I'll click refresh. That's going to get important coming up shortly. Okay. I'll click refresh. And it still says out of date. It only takes a few seconds. And that's one of the things you do want to make sure that we do. Now, if we need to set all the computers, like right now, there's an emergency, there's a virus, there's some malware spreading like wildfire, there's something we can do to have it happen right now. So this only takes a few seconds here. Okay. Okay, so there we go. So now it's up to date. Now if I try to go back, look at this. And I tried to load the software where I was previously allowed. It says you cannot. It was blocked. Why? Because it's unapproved. Now we can ban certain software, certain executables. This one is unapproved, different. They both result in it being blocked, but banned overrides everything. So if there's a known malware out there, it can override an approval. Okay. Now, what a user can do is they can say, you know what, I really need this for my job. Okay. Please send me an email. I'll put this to ruth@local.com. And I'll go ahead and submit it. Okay. Now, what I can do as an admin, I'll see the approval requests here. And I can go in and specify, hey, you know, this can be allowed or this can be denied and so on. Okay. It takes a few seconds to show up here. This is a console where we can go in and approve or deny. Now, what I want to talk about is what happens, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this over. I'm going to bring over this article from New Horizons talking about, hey, we're working from home. We don't have, again, the double hop or 2 firewall protection, internal protection, and so on. And they're talking about here the different types of attacks. And I want you to see this one right here. Okay. You see where it says #1 increase in attacks is remote access inefficiencies. Okay, VPNs and so on. Now, not only that, you see where it says here, once attackers get in, we have to concern ourselves with the lateral movement. I've got something for that coming up shortly. And 40% of the attacks use island hopping, and we'll talk about that. And land attacks. This says, you know what? Many of them are no longer creating viruses and malware. What they're doing is they're using typical software that's usually approved against itself, like PowerShell, as we're getting ready to see, like the command prompt, or cefc.exe. And I'm going to show you why I stress that in just a second. So what do we do to protect ourselves against those? So malware that was created, viruses and so on, those may be detected by signatures or antivirus signatures and so on. But all the attacker has to do is make a small change, and then it may not be detected. So let's just say that something got by this tool, which is maybe, if we didn't configure this correctly, it's just really low. But something got past this. What I can do is I can go here. You guys remember that easy button with staples? Well, seems like the easy button may be that. Okay. I want to show you something really quick. We have something here. As we saw earlier, we saw the different policies can be set in low, medium, and high. Okay, so maybe different departments would be low, moderate, and high, and so on. But we see, so perhaps there's some island hopping. Okay, so maybe there's a company or subsidiary that we work with is not as tightly locked down as perhaps headquarters and so on. So the attacker went to them first, and now they're coming to us. We can put all the machines in lockdown quickly. Okay? This places all the machines in high enforcement mode. Now what we can do is we can find out what exactly has happened. So pretty much our machines are protected. Anything new will not run. Okay. So now we want to do our incident response. Okay. So say there's an incident, we placed all the machines in app control in lockdown. I'm going to move this over. Let me go ahead and bring this up. Let me talk about a tool that we would use with incident response. Okay. That tool is CB response. You may hear it called EDR, okay? Endpoint detection and response. So where app control is proactive, this tool that we have is incident response, one of my favorite tools. Okay, I've been in IT, cyber for about 15 years, and I gotta say, this one's my favorite. Okay, so an incident, we think an incident's going on, we wanna use another tool. Now this tool, again, is reactive, but it gives us visibility on what is going on in the environment as we're getting ready to see. You wanna think of this tool as a video camera, CCTV. It records everything that's going on in our environment so we can detect what's going on and respond accordingly. Okay? So our tool, okay, this one here, EDR, it can integrate with other third-party security tools. As you'll see, this is not an exhaustive list either. There's so many more. So Blue Coat, and we work with all of them. Palo Alto and so on can work with us, work with our tool. And then we work with SIEM systems, Splunk, SolarWinds, Kiwi, RSA, IBM, all of them. Okay, so we have our tool here. We can integrate with other network security tools, and we can work with some really good SIEM systems. So what we need to do is we need an agent. Okay, here's another agent, very small, very low impact on in-app control as well as this one, very, very low overhead. So we can install these agents on servers, whether they be physical or virtual, laptops and desktops. So look at this, fixed function devices, including what I've seen, ATMs, point of sale systems. You know, lately, I can't mention who they are, but they've been loading them into medical devices. Okay? So yes, again, the biggest thing with this tool, you want to think of it as acting like a video camera, and it captures everything. So here's what happens. We have our endpoints here, and this is true for our app control as well. Our endpoints can be Windows, Mac, and Linux. Now, let me do a caveat. I get asked questions about Debian. Okay. Now, with Debian is different. These sensors, they need to be RPM capable. Okay? They have to be RPM. Otherwise, yes, we work with pretty much all versions of Windows, Mac, and Linux. Okay. So we get the sensor installed. Very similar to app control, starts doing an inventory of what's on the system. Sends it over to our EDR server. Every few minutes, actually, I've seen it happen every 30 seconds. Now, these endpoints, we support up to 150,000 endpoints. Okay? So every few minutes it says, hey, here's something new in my environment. So this is what's going to allow us to catch those attackers. Okay? So the server says, you know what, thank you for that information that you sent me. Your next check-in time is within 30 seconds or 1 minute and so on. Okay. Now, this should look very familiar. So what this tool does, it does the same thing. We still have our collective cloud. And it says, hey, here's what the sensors told us is running in our environment. What do you know about it? And the collective cloud says, here's what we know about it. Now, here's some information. This collective cloud is huge. It will not send over to the server. It would overwhelm it. All the information is ever captured from all different companies. It doesn't do that. All it says is, you know what, here's the information in our environment. Tell us what you know about this information only. Now, in this product, if you ever work with, if you're in a really high security area, this happens over port 443, where you do not want to work with the collective cloud, we can disable this feature. Okay, so perhaps the server's air gap. Okay, so we can disable this feature. So our cloud defense comes back and says, here's what we know about these executables that happen to be running in your environment. Okay. And then next thing, every few minutes, it says, okay, here's something new. Now, what's good about this here and what's in app control is what's sent over is a hash, okay, of the executables, or it's actually looking for the Windows Portable Execution, okay, WPE. So if that header is in there, it considers this to be an executable, and it keeps track of it. Okay? So what's interesting about this is only a hash is sent over, although there's going to be one more thing that's going to be kind of neat. The hash is sent over. So if this machine sends over information about, or let's just say they're Windows machines, a couple of Windows machines, send over some information about the same hash, the server looks at it and says, no, it's already here, no need for me to fill up my database. So there's only one instance for the entire organization. Okay, now here's where things get neat. Now remember I mentioned earlier that it's like a video camera, records everything, whether it's good or bad. You want to think of this as if you're in a store, a grocery store. Okay, so you're looking around, putting things in your basket, you're checking out, you're doing nothing wrong. It records that, like a video camera. Or perhaps if we have somebody that's stealing something in the store, they walk in with a trench coat and it's 150 degrees outside, they're looking suspicious, they steal something and then they walk out, well, we record that too. So let me give you an example, okay, of everything that it records. And this is what we're going to see shortly. Is me as an administrator, perhaps I want to install Chrome. Okay, nothing wrong with Chrome. I should be able to install it. Well, I go to the internet. There's my network connection. Let me get my drawing tool here. Okay. So I go to the internet and I download Chrome.exe, which executes this file. Now, here's what's neat for you threat hunters, you incident responders. All executables that are considered to be binaries, we do a copy. Okay, we place a copy, and I'll show you where it is, of that binary, perhaps if we want to do reverse engineering. I use a sheet dip, locked down, I don't want this virus to escape type of machine. And I can download this binary and do some reverse engineering. I love Ollie debug. Okay. So it records that too. Now, Chrome can modify some files on your system. It can modify the registry if I tell it to make it my default browser. It can go ahead and create other network connections and so on. But this is legitimate traffic, so let me erase that. Okay. What about an attack? As we're getting ready to see, so a user goes to a website, they don't even click anything. They do a drive-by download. Okay. It executes on the user's machine. Same thing here, it creates a copy of the binary that we can go retrieve later. It then modifies files, adds a run key to the registry, then connects to China, okay, where perhaps a command and control server. So we actually see all of this as well. So now here's an example. Here's an example, deconstructing the moment of compromise. And I want to compare what we would normally see with signature-based intrusion detection or antivirus software versus what we offer. So we've got 3 different types of attack vectors. So there perhaps could be a Java exploitation, the user goes to the internet, social engineering, which is what we're seeing now, a phishing attack or phishing attempt, and maybe a physical drive, okay? So what perhaps is a signature-based see versus what do we see? Okay. So let me talk about this. So your signature-based antivirus software, it doesn't show a user visiting a website. It doesn't show them clicking on something. It doesn't show it being downloaded. Now, when it starts being spawning a payload, then yes, your signature-based antivirus system or IDS probably will find this. Now, what about social engineering? It may not show any of this. The user gets their email, they double-click the PDF. The first stage, second stage injects code. They may see this, maybe. Antivirus software, again, it could change. And as far as physical media is concerned, they may not see that at all until some type of malicious action takes place, and then perhaps the intrusion detection will detect it. What we do is we see everything. We see when a user visits a website and clicks on something, as we're getting ready to see. The user gets an email, we see that. They enter an unknown USB, we see that as well. Okay? And then we can use app control to block it, okay, for all of these. And yes, app control does integrate with this EDR product. So let's see a demo. Okay. So let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to bring this over. Now, this is our EDR product here. Okay, this is what we call our heads-up display. Let's make this a little bit longer. Okay, so in app control, what we did is we clicked that easy button, we locked everything down. Now what we want to do is find out what in the world is going on in our environment. This is awesome, you guys. So I can use a tool called a watch list. There's so much more to this. But there's a watch list that says, you know what, let's run certain queries in our environment every 10 minutes, along with our threat intelligence. I'm going to go here. We have lots of threat intelligence. This is information that we get from the cloud. See that national vulnerability database? And this looks at everything coming in and going out. So we even have Alien Vault. And again, these are not exhaustive. These are just the default. We can add more, we can create our own, and so on. Okay. So that we even have threat exchange. Let me scroll down. There's MITRE, Tor, SANS, Threat Connect. There's a lot. Okay. All we have to do is enable it. But I'm not going to even enable this. I'm not going to. By default, there's a few that are enabled by default. But I'm going to go here to my watch list. Now, by default, there are some watch lists that are here. What is a watch list? We're looking for something, okay? And there's 8 here by default. One of them says, I'm looking for connections from my environment that's going to either a domain in China or a domain in Russia. And it looks like there was a hit. Okay, so there was a hit. Now this would strike fear in my heart. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to be here at work a while doing my research on this one. So here's my FTP going to either Russia or China from an HR server. Okay. So that would definitely get my attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open these up. And here's where things get neat. You guys ready? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to FTP, and I can see somebody launched from the command prompt a connection to China. Okay, so remember the watch list said Russia or China. Now we know it's going to China. Okay. Now over here, we've got something called sethc.exe. Now for those of you guys who are working with Windows, sethc.exe looks like it's a command prompt here, but we know it's not. If you press your caps lock key or your shift key 5 times, that's our sticky keys. So what in the world is sticky keys doing launching FTP? So I'm going to click on this sethc.exe. So I can see somebody logged in, used sethc.exe to launch an FTP connection. That can't be good. Okay. Remember, this is a video camera, so we're catching everything. So now here's where my incident response and threat hunting tools get really good. I'm going to do a search. I'm like, what in the world is this sethc.exe? And how did it get there? Okay. And why does it have a command prompt logo? So now I can do my threat hunting. Okay. So I'll say, hey, I'm looking for a process called sethc.exe. What do you know about it? Okay. And this is what it found. So there's my sethc.exe. I know, and for time's sake, I know it also created a child process to the registry. Okay, so I can narrow this down. There it is. So now you guys look at this. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. I can see somebody logged in, launched sethc.exe, and did something to my registry. Okay, and I can see here that they added a run key, a typical attacker 101 type of attack, right? So basically they added a run key that says as soon as the operating system runs, as soon as the user logs in, launch this process. And they use something called Adobe Updater.exe. Okay, Adobe Updater.exe. So what I'm going to do is the same thing I did before. What is this Adobe Updater.exe? And here's the beauty of this. Okay, here's the beauty. Okay, Adobe Updater. Adobe Updater.exe. Perfect. I can type this in right. All right. Now, here's where things get interesting. On the right-hand side, you see where it says this created 1 registry modification, 5 registry modifications, 10 file mods, 1 network connection, and so on. So this one would probably get my attention right here. So let's do a deep dive and look at this, you guys. So we can actually see what happened. This takes us back to patient 0. Okay, so who started all this? So meanwhile, in app control, all the machines are in lockdown mode. Now we're doing our incident response. So if I go here, I can see what happened was somebody, and that somebody tells me up here, somebody named M. Waters used Windows Explorer. They launched Chrome. They went to a website. Again, this could have been a drive-by download. Perhaps they didn't click anything, okay? Or they clicked on something that read report.pdf.exe. Now you're like, why in the world would they click anything that reads exe? Well, Windows does not show files of known types, okay? So they probably thought it was just report.pdf. It launched, and look at this. It launched these child processes. One of them was Xcopy. Okay. It launched this one, another Xcopy. But here's the damage. Okay, here's the damage. If I scroll down, you can see, and I'm going to quickly go through these. So I want to leave time for question and answers. The net.exe, look at this. They mapped a drive. They mapped a drive. Look, and you can actually see they put in the password right there. How in the world did they get our password for an admin machine? And we can actually see that here. Does anybody know what mssc.exe is? So now things are getting real. Okay. MSSC. Now, here's the beauty of EDR. Over here on the right-hand side, remember I mentioned that binaries are copied? We have a copy where we can go and download it later. Let me show you what that looks like. And this will tell us what the mssc.exe is. Okay. Seems like our environment is a little bit slow. Mimikatz. It tells me here it's Mimikatz. If I go in and take a look at the binary, this is where I can download it into a locked down sheet dip machine. I can download it. and examine it. And it tells me here is Mimikatz. So what is Mimikatz? So some attacker from China downloaded Mimikatz, which is a credential dumping tool. They did a lot of stuff. And you can actually see it here. They then did some reconnaissance on our network, did a whole bunch of net use, whole bunch of net commands to find out what shares are open. They did a net stat. We could see the commands that they ran and so on. Okay. So the story is that M. Waters launched Chrome, downloaded report.pdf.exe, which then ran on the network, dumped our loaded Mimikatz, dumped the credentials, and now they're connecting to a lot of different machines in our environment. We can actually see that it's jumping from doing lateral movement from different servers. Okay. So what happened next? That is a class that we offer. There's more to this story. Okay, so once they dumped the credentials, they mapped drives on the network. What were they doing with that connection from? This is actually a real attack too. What were they doing from M. Waters' machine to the domain in China? What was happening there? And we have a class where we do a deep dive into how do we figure out what they were doing, when, and how. And then how do we protect ourselves? We do have the ability to ban hashes. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring this down. All right, so let me go ahead and bring this back up. Okay, now what we've gone over so far is two things. We took a look at app control, which loads on a Windows server. We took a look at EDR. Now that EDR I just showed you runs on a CentOS server, so it's Linux. What happens if we don't want anything on-prem? Okay, so we're like, you know what, I just want something perhaps in the cloud. We do offer EDR cloud. Notice what's missing is an on-prem server. We handle everything in the cloud, but we still get the same ability to create policies, which is part of app control, do incident response, which is part of EDR. Combine them together, we call this Carbon Black Cloud. So we have lots of tools where we can do this. I only want to show you one thing with Carbon Black Cloud, and that's this. Here's what Carbon Black Cloud looks like. Now there's different kinds. I have access to all three. There's Endpoint Standard, which is what I want to show you. There's Enterprise EDR, and there's Audit Remediation. Let me show you two quick things, and then I'll open this up for any questions. So what I'm going to do is I've got one endpoint, Dunder Muffin. I didn't name that. That wasn't me. Now, if I go to alerts, this is where it'll show me everything that's going on in my environment, and I can specify a time frame. But I'm going to go to investigate. Okay, I want to do an investigation, say on Firefox. I can type it in my query up here, or I can filter it over here. And if I go in here, I can do an investigation. This looks very similar to what I just showed you with my on-prem EDR. Okay? And this is all in the cloud. All we need to do with this product is just get the endpoint installed, and then we connect with the browser to manage our environment. Okay. Okay, so that was my demo on the cloud. And did you know that, again, New Horizons has been teaching these types of live virtual training since 2001. So we do have a lot of facilitators and training and so on that we get great ratings too for the training that we provide. Okay. So thank you guys so much. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Not a problem. If anyone has any questions, please take a moment to type your questions into the question section. or the questions menu, and we'll get to them in just a minute. Just wanted to echo what Ruth was saying. If you have any questions or if you're interested in what was presented today about VMware or Carbon Black, please contact your local center for more information. You can log on to newhorizons.com and do a quick zip code search to find the center that's nearest you. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing Cybersecurity Awareness Month throughout the month of October. And we have one more week. It's hard to believe that October is ending next week, but we still have 3 great sessions next week if you haven't registered for them already. And also, you can take a look at our archives to see what has been presented up until this point. And a quick reminder that this session is being recorded, so I will make sure to send that out to you later today. So just taking a look here, Ruth, to see if we have any questions in regards to Carbon Black, VMware, or any cybersecurity questions here, folks. Feel free to type that in. Give everyone a little bit more time here. All right. Well, you know what? It looks like we don't have any questions. You did such a great job, Ruth. But people totally understand and get it. So we appreciate you. Thank you again for speaking on behalf of New Horizons. Would love to have you back for another session at another time. Thank you again. Oh, we actually do have questions coming in. All right. I guess I was speaking too soon here. So we do have one question that says, what other filters are available via Carbon Black? If that
We have a lot. We have a lot. In fact, I can bring this over. 1 second. Let me go ahead and minimize this. When it comes to the filters, there's a lot. So I can, matter of fact, let me show you guys something kind of neat. They're all here. So I can give a list. You see where it says process name, group, host name, parent process, process path. There's a lot here. And this is not even an exhaustive list because when we create our search terms, we have a lot of options here as well. Registry, host name, time, file path. I know this reads MD5, but we do work with SHA-256 hashes, binary, network, and there's subcategories here as well. So there's a lot. Let me know if that answers your question. Now, something I did not show you guys, which I think you'll find, especially as an incident responder, if we do a search for, you guys take a look at this, like cmd.exe. Let's do this. Okay, now what I can do is I can go inside the process, and if there's something in here that I find that we get a lot of information at the top, here on the right-hand side about each of these processes, but we have some down here that I can tag into an investigation. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and tag this. So if I want to be able to examine this, all the things that I find interesting later, they're here and all in one big interface. And if I need to take this to court, for example, or show it to someone else, I can export this into a picture, a pretty image. Okay.
Great.
Hopefully that answers your question.
You definitely did answer the question here. Another question that someone had is in regards to VPN. Is there a threat to users when they are using VPN as well?
You know what? And that's where app control comes into play. So if they connect via VPN, we track everything that's going on in our environment. In fact, if you want to see it here, if I go to reports, all activity, everything is stored here in events. And this is a lot of info. So we teach you in class how to filter to look for certain things. So all the activity that runs in our environment goes here. Anything that has not been pre-approved, if it comes in via VPN and so on, is blocked. If we enable high enforcement.
Okay, great. Another question is, how easily can you create automated responses to unusual or suspect behavior?
I'm so glad you said that. We have certain rules where we go in here, for example, software rules. Let me take you there real quick. Because that was one of the questions I had. I'm like, this is a lot of work if I have to go in and block a whole bunch of things, and the user wants to send me a notification that they need this for their job. I'm going to do this forever. No, we're not. What we can do, I'm not sure why that's there, is we can create custom rules that say, you know what, if we get a response back from our threat intelligence, says these are clean, like I can do a range from 8 to 10. If we see 8 to 10, that's a clean, trusted application, automatically approve it. So we can do that. And so there's a lot of auto rules. In fact, we also have one called a rapid config. So if we want this does work on servers too. So for example, we have a rapid config for Microsoft System Center, SQL Server, Teams, and a whole bunch more domain controllers. Some common configuration recommended settings that we can get up and running within minutes. So hopefully that answers your question. There's a lot of automation options.
Great. And one last question that came in is, can I search by MD5 hash?
Yes, in fact, that is our default. Let me do a search. And if I go into my search terms, if I chose to do so, there it is. Henshaw 256. I know it doesn't read that here because of what I'm working with. It's just a little bit older, but I can do a search based on an MD5, yes.
Fantastic. We had another question come in, and it's actually a very interesting one. So if you're not connected, say, to the internet, are there still safety concerns that we should be aware of?
Your children? I'm kidding. So I would say so, even if you're not connected to the internet, like we have here. Let me see if I can show you. I believe it's under software rules. If someone were to try to install some software using an external device, okay? So what we do is we set it up to where external devices are not automatically approved. So anything that tries to run from an external device, thumb drive, and so on, is blocked with high enforcement. Now, what we can do is we can say, hey, if they're using these devices, they're approved so that executables and so on can run from that. So if you're not connected to the internet, we still have a concern about installing software with external drives. And so we have something for that as well.
Wonderful. Those are all the questions that we have for today, Ruth. Again, really appreciate your time and taking the time out to speak on behalf of New Horizons and to us. With that being said, everyone, truly appreciate it for joining us and hope to see you all in another session. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.